As the season winds down, which Sharks players have established themselves as franchise cornerstones?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network, we cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be looking at some of, we're going to be basically categorizing all the Sharks players into different categories, including which ones are franchise cornerstones that you can build around. Look at Sharks quality players, average, below average. We go through basically everybody. So let us start by kind of categorizing everyone and what each category means. So I did this exercise almost 2 years ago to the day. I think it came out April 5th. 2 years ago, I looked at the entire Sharks roster and put them into separate categories. So the first category is your highest category. That is your franchise cornerstones. These are your players that you feel are going to define your franchise for the next while. So like your top end players, these are good players on any team. So then you have quality players. So quality players are usually kind of a step below. These are guys who are would fit on any team, right? These are good guys who have you want to have quality players. Maybe not as much of the high end ceiling as some of the other guys. Maybe they've on the back nine of their career, whatever it is. But just these are, again, good quality players. They would play, usually second line minutes on most teams, or maybe second pairing defenseman type of situations. Then you have average NHL players. So these are guys who should be in the NHL, would definitely play on most teams. Think of third line type of players, or maybe your fourth, fifth type of defenseman. Then we have below average. These are guys who are kind of fringe roster players, but still kind of NHL players. Then you have replacement level players. So these are the players that are kind of you can swap them out. And it's not really going to do too much, right? If you bring them in, these are kind of the guys who are either hanging on to an NHL job, or right. That's kind of what they're more AHL type of players. So, and then I have incomplete grades. So these are players who maybe just got here. And we'll talk about some of those guys as well. So let us start with the franchise cornerstones for the San Jose Sharks. And to no surprise, well, if you're watching YouTube, I have these alphabetically by last name. So this isn't a ranking, but I have them alphabetically by last name. Ulf Askarov, the goalie, franchise. And I know he's only played a handful of games. I think he is a franchise corner. He has shown enough in his time in the AHL and in the NHL that you believe he's a franchise cornerstone goalie. You have found your answer at goal for the next 10 years, you hope. So he's 22. Next year, he will kick in a new contract that's 2 years at $2 million. That's a Macklin Celebrini, of course, right? 18. What can we say about Macklin Celebrini that we haven't said about Macklin Celebrini? He is the real deal, legitimate, going to be an NHL superstar for the San Jose Sharks. He doesn't turn 19 until this summer. And he next year will be in year 2 of his ELC. William Eklund, the oldest. No, I guess Askarov is the oldest by a little bit, but William Eklund, 22. He will be entering the last year of his ELC. I think we can safely, from the past 2 seasons of what William Eklund has put on tape for the Sharks, he is a franchise cornerstone player, someone you build the franchise around. And then Will Smith. who's 20, just turned 20 not that long, like 2 weeks ago. Is going to be entering the second year of his ELC next season at 950,000. So no surprises, I think, there, right? Will Smith has definitely really established himself the second half of the season. We talked a bunch about it yesterday, and especially his defensive, but like all these players, right, are high-end picks. Celebrini, the first overall pick. Will Smith, a fourth overall pick. Eklund, a seventh overall pick. Askarov, I think, was the 7th or 11th overall pick in his draft. Like, these are all extremely high-end players that either the Sharks drafted and developed, and or they went out and acquired in Askarov's case. And you feel like these are going to be kind of the faces of the franchise over the next several years. And the great thing is, one of these guys is basically start of next season going to be on a new contract. Like, everybody else is still on their ELCs here. Like, I think that shows how awesome this rebuild is going for the Sharks, where you have went out and acquired and got guys who basically all but Askarov, and even Askarov, like, I feel we've seen enough between his Sharks and his Barracuda, and even going to his, tape with the Admirals, we've seen enough where you feel like you have a guy here. Like, all these guys have done enough, I think, to prove they are going to be franchise cornerstones for the San Jose Sharks for the next several seasons. And most of these guys are just getting started here. So the next group are the quality players. So these are players that like teams would love to have on their front. And right, like, maybe they're not going to be these as high end as our franchise cornerstone players, but these are still, like, you need these types of players, right? And these are usually these next two ones are usually what makes good teams great, and like really kind of separates for most the kind of what makes you a good team. For the Sharks, they have 4 quality players. Colin Graff, who I am projecting a little bit, but again, I think we've started to see enough from Colin Graff where you can project him to be kind of either a second or third line player, like either a good second line player or a really, really extremely high end third line player who can do whatever you need. Like, we've started to see enough from him from this season where you feel like he is a quality player, going to be a quality player for you. He's 22. He's got 2 years left on his ELC into next season. Like, you feel great. Actually, sorry, 1 year left. 1 year left. Typo there, my bad. But 1 year left on his ELC going into next season. So you also have Shakir Mukhamadullin, who I know got hurt, and his, like, you could maybe talk like I could debate Mukhamadullin on where to put him, if you want to put him as a quality player or as an NHL player. And I know his development has taken a little bit longer than I think maybe Sharks fans would hope for and stuff, but I still feel like Shakir Mukhamadullin is going to be a really good second pairing defenseman, right? And if you're pairing him with Luca Cagnoni or whomever you want to pair Shakir Mukhamadullin with, like, he's already shown a lot this season, right? And especially playing with the Sharks before his injury, of being able to play big minutes. Yes, he still makes mistakes, but again, right, he's only got 30-ish, 35 games under his NHL belt. I feel like the floor is high enough, and I still feel like he's got another level to go. And like, if he can stay healthy now is going to be the big question. But I feel like Mukhamadullin is a quality, on his way to being a quality NHL player. The rest of the guys here, 2 veterans, Tyler Toffoli, who's 32. He'll have 3 years left on his contract at $6 million with a no move clause. And then Alex Wennberg, who's 30. He'll have 1 year left on his deal at $5 million with a modified no trade clause for next year. Like, both these guys are, guys that you need on your team, right? And Toffoli has proven wherever he goes, dude's a walking 25 to 30 goal scorer. The reason why I wouldn't put him as a franchise cornerstone right now is the age, right? And I still think he's going to be very valuable over the rest of his contract. But would you be surprised if maybe over the next like 18 months you start to see a little bit of slippage from Tyler Toffoli, which is to be expected, right? 32 years old. Wennberg, I think, again, on most teams is probably a really high-end 3C or a solid 2C type of player. So that's kind of where I have Wennberg for these guys. And the Sharks, they have both proven to be outstanding players for San Jose this year. I think especially for like Tyler Toffoli since the day he walked in, and Wennberg now since he's been kind of given more opportunity to play with just better players. You've seen Wennberg continue to play really well and show why Mike Grier went out to get him on day one of free agency. So we're going to kind of look at the rest here, kind of look at which players are on the Sharks that I think are kind of average players and which ones are below average, replacement, all that stuff. So we'll continue digging into the Sharks player tiers here in just 1 second. There's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of the sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff to show you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. I've used Game Time a bunch of times to get tickets for hockey games, concerts, whatever it is, they've got you covered there. Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck, and you have peace of mind. Of course, you can see your seats before you buy. There's no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, so you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, before we continue up, we start looking at the Sharks kind of average NHL players. Do want to, of course, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. We have plenty of great content coming up. Even though the season's winding down, the off season is where we shine here at Locked On Sharks, especially when you have $40 million of cap space and a projected top 3 pick in the NHL draft. It's going to be a big off season for the Sharks. So make sure you are following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right, let's keep going looking at these Sharks average players. And they have two guys who I consider to be average NHL players, like guys who I think would be rosterable players. Timothy Liljegren, defenseman, 25. He'll be on the last year of his deal at $3 million next season. Then Jack Thompson, 23, who is an RFA. And I know like both these guys have had kind of their ups and downs, right? But I think Liljegren, again, on most teams, probably like both these guys, probably like your 4th or 5th type of defenseman, right? And if these guys are your 4th or 5th type of defenseman, you're probably feeling really good about where you're at. And I know it's a little bit of a projection of Jack Thompson, but again, I'm kind of projecting, 2, I think enough from what I've seen over since he got here last year at the trade deadline, the way he played the Barracuda, the way he's played with the Sharks. I know it's a little bit kind of, had that tweener season, right? A lot of up and down between both. I think next year he is going to be a legitimate, like make the roster at opening night. Again, depending on what the Sharks do this offseason. But like, I think these guys are they're average NHL players. Right there, you can put them back there. You don't really have to worry about them most nights. Yes, they're going to make mistakes as average NHL players do, but again, I think these are rosterable players on most NHL teams. So yeah. Next, so these are below average guys, and like this isn't too. I'm not trying to be mean. Like you do have to tier these guys and stuff, and I still think these are NHL caliber players for the most part. Like these are guys who should still be on an NHL roster, but again, like they're probably third or fourth line type of players. Bottom pairing defensemen, I like it is what it is. So looking at Ty Dellandrea, forward, 24. He's got will have 1 year left on his deal at 1.3 million. Like he's a perfectly serviceable fourth line forward, right? He forechecks hard, he plays hard. Does he take dumb penalties? 100% yes. But like GMs and coaches kind of value what he brings, right? And that playing hard nose kind of style. Like, is this your Luke Cunningham replacement? Probably. Like that's what Ty Dellandrea is going to be. He's probably going to be your Luke Cunningham replacement for the next couple of seasons. So again, a guy who's valued, but he's a below average NHL player. Nikolai Kovalenko, forward, 25. He is an RFA this off season. Kind of the same thing, right? We've seen some flashes from Kovalenko, but we haven't seen it consistently enough. And then I think you take the age factor in, right? Yes, he is a rookie, but he's 25. Like, how much better is he really going to get at this point? And I think you're kind of, I think you'll probably get occasional games of Kovalenko doing something cool, and then you kind of forget Kovalenko's on the roster for a while. So next is Alexander Georgiev, the goalie, 29. He is also an RFA this offseason. He is definitely like a below average goalie. And can he have moments where he plays better? Yes. I think also if he's a backup goalie who's playing 30 games this season compared to having to start 50 games this season that we've seen him the past couple seasons, right? And right now he's probably going to play basically every game the rest of the way for the Sharks. He's probably going to be in a much better position to succeed. I think we've talked about this before, but I think he's just a guy who I think that Colorado ran him into the ground, and I don't know if he can ever get back to being the player that he was before. I think he just might have there may not be a much tread on those tires, but would you be surprised if Georgiev bounces around for the next couple seasons? Almost like maybe a Martin Jones-esque, like you have some moments here, you play, you're kind of a backup and, for a couple teams over the next couple seasons. And maybe he has a moment here or there. Like that's kind of what I expect for Georgiev over the next couple seasons here is I think he'll just sign some minimum deals, go play on some teams that have a entrenched goalie, like, maybe like a franchise or quality goalie, and a guy where he plays 35 games a season. Like that's kind of what I expect from Alexander Georgiev here. So, and maybe like, I know some people would like to bring him back. I think there's plenty of other options out there in the goalie market. Every year the goalie market is always crazy, and it's always a carousel, and there'll be options for the Sharks this offseason. So, below average defenseman, Mario Ferraro will be in. He's 26, be entering the last year of his deal at 3.25 million. I can't believe, man, like, I've been doing this podcast. Like I remember when Ferraro signed that deal, we're going to be entering the last year of that deal here. It's kind of crazy. Henry Thrun, defenseman, 24. He's going to be entering the last year of his deal at 1 million. And then Mark-Edouard Vlasic, defenseman, 38, 1 year at $7 million with a modified no trade clause. So again, like all these guys, I think the Ferraro, and this is something I've definitely have spoken about before, and I think Ferraro kind of got ruined by the Sharks where he was asked to do too much too quickly, too soon. And like his development suffered from it because they just didn't have anybody else who was competent. Like there's a parallel universe where Ferraro is, maybe given a little bit more leeway with his development and not put in the tougher situations that he was. And Ferraro probably turns out to be a better player, but he's still like a valuable player. Like teams love what he brings and stuff. But I think though, I think Mario Ferraro is just a below average NHL player. And, the analytics will definitely, I'm actually probably being kind compared to what the analytics say for Mario Ferraro. Henry Thrun, I think I was much higher on him kind of coming out of college, and there's still a pathway for him to maybe get better. But you've seen a lot of up and down from Thrun, and now he's kind of been dealing with some injuries. So I think he is kind of in that, like, he's probably like a sixth defenseman type of scenario. In the market with Vlasic, who, yes, is if you take out the contract, like just take out the contract, and especially right now with the Sharks, where like the contracts don't matter because of how much cap space. Like Market Vlasic is a perfectly like cromulent sixth or seventh defenseman, right? And I think he has played well. And I know he's dealt with injuries this year, but when he's been in the lineup for the most part, like he's played really well, and they've done a good job of like, okay, like Vlasic, you're gonna play, 16 or 17 minutes a night. Like we're gonna kind of put you in a position to succeed. And I think they've done that with him. And like if he's back, assuming he'll be back next year because of his contract, and I don't think he wants to retire. If he's the Sharks' sixth or seventh defense, if he's their seventh defenseman going into the off season or going into the season, and then Vlasic, he's got to play for guys when they get injured and stuff like that. Like I think the Sharks have had a really nice off season then, at least kind of revamping the defense. So yeah, so we'll look at next the kind of the Sharks replacement level players here. Then we'll kind of take a peek at what the Sharks roster looked like at the end of the 2023 and kind of where I had everyone and who's left. I think it's it's a more fun. So we'll look at that here in just 1 second. The NCAA tournament is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. The favorites, man, they just keep doing their thing. Is it Auburn this year? Is it Duke? They do have the best player. So just keep betting favorites. You're probably going to have a good time. When the tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is super simple to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, before we finish up, of course want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you're done with this episode, go check out one of the other great shows here at the Locked On Network. Of course, you have Locked On NHL, where we have a rotating cast of hosts every day, talking about the biggest stories in the NHL. I'm sure with Ovechkin getting close to breaking the record, you're definitely going to want to hear from the national host. You want to hear from, Locked On Capitals. Plenty of great stuff here coming up with Ovechkin. Or check out one of the shows here in the Bay Area. Locked On Warriors, Locked On A's, Locked On Giants. Again, are the Giants good? Are the Giants good? Ben will tell you over at Locked On Giants. Locked On Niners get you ready for the draft. Plenty of great stuff here at the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. All right. The last two levels. So again, replacement level. These are just guys who you see him come in the lineup, you see him come out of the lineup. It's just kind of is what it is with some of these guys. So Barclay Goodrow, I think, is a replacement level player. 32, 2 years left on his deal at $3.64 million. I had someone ask in the comments, why is Barclay Goodrow getting paid that much money? Go ask the New York Rangers why they signed him to a 6-year deal at $3.64 million. Who knows? Noah Gregor, I think the epitome of a replacement level player. He's 26. He'll be an RFA. I can't believe he's still an RFA. I feel like Gregor's been in the league for 20 years at this point. But he's an RFA. He's go Noah Gregor, go Burr. Carl Grundstrom, 27, 1 year at $1.8 million. And Clean Costin, 25, who will be an RFA as well. I think all these guys are replacement level forwards here where, again, you can swap them in, swap them out. It's probably not going to make too much of a difference. And none of these guys should kind of hold you back from seeing, replacing them, trying to get better, or having younger players eventually take their job. So Defensively, Lucas Carlson, 27, 1 year, $800,000. He's a great AHL defenseman. He's actually played really well, but I think he's still kind of like on most teams, he is kind of like your 7th or 8th. Like if you need to bring him up from the AHL to play a couple of games like the Sharks have had, especially with all the injuries, he's not going to hurt you. And I think he's played really well, to be honest. He's also had some mistakes as well. Vincent Desharnais, 28, 1 year, $2 million. He's also kind of your replacement level. If he's your 6th defenseman, okay. Same thing with Jan Ruder, right? He's 34. He'll be an RFA at the end of the season. So, and then Jimmy Schultz, again, kind of the same thing with the Lucas Carlson, right? Extremely great AHL defenseman. I would love the Sharks to bring him back for the Barracuda. He's an RFA. And then Gorgi Romanov, the goalie, 25. Again, if he's like your 3rd goalie in the system, which he kind of is, or I guess he is kind of it right now with Askarov still hurt. If he's your 3rd goalie in the system and has to play a couple NHL games here and there, for the most part, it's not going to be the end of the world for you. I know he's had some moments. He's had some tough moments in here, but I think I still believe in Romanov, and I think next year, like if him and Carrier are your goalies in the Barracuda, like I think that's perfectly fine. Maybe you bring in a veteran to kind of maybe push, but we can discuss that later. So I think this goes to show you of like where the Sharks have to go, right? Is they've got their franchise pieces, right? That you've worked really hard to go get those, and you have some quality guys, but right, you just don't have enough like average NHL players. And I think that's where the talent, you need to push more of those replacement below average into like average level players. And I think that's where you'll see a big jump from the Sharks, is when you start to see some of those guys graduate there. For fun though, I do have some incomplete grades here. So these are guys who have played some Sharks games this year. Luca Cagnoni, he's played a handful of games here. He's 20. He's got 2 years left on his ELC next season. I think he projects to be a quality player for the Sharks. Ethan Cardwell, forward, he's 22. He's got 1 year. He'll have 1 year left on his ELC. I think he'll be kind of projects to be an average NHL player. Daniel Gushin, 23, an RFA. Gushin, like I still believe he can be like an average NHL player, but he just might be a tweener, right? Unfortunately, that just might be his thing. But all those guys, I think Luca Cagnoni is the guy where you feel like you could kind of project him to be a big piece of the Sharks kind of going forward. So. And then Cam Lund is 20, just got here. Will have 2 years left on his ELC after this season. I kind of project him to be a quality player for the Sharks. You can see maybe quality or average type of player for Lund, but I'm still gonna I know it's a tiny sample size, but he has shown a lot in his couple of games here. And then Zach Ostapchuk, forward, 21. Will have 1 year left on his ELC at $825,000. I don't want to I'm trying to kind of give him the Fabian Zetterlund grace, right? Remember Zetterlund's after he got here at the trade deadline, where it just kind of wasn't it didn't look good. A lot of fans were like, "What are we doing here? We traded for this guy," and then now he scores 3 points in 22 games. I'm trying to give Zach Ostapchuk a little bit of that grace, right? Of you're going from a competitive team like the Sens, who are fighting for a playoff spot, to the Sharks. I'm willing to kind of wipe this season clean and see how he comes into camp next year. So, but I still think he's like a 4th line type of player on a good team. So, but how did the Sharks look in the end of the 2023 season? So the Sharks at the time had one franchise cornerstone. If you're watching on YouTube, anybody with a line through their name is no longer with the organization. So I'll go through them. Franchise cornerstones, they had 1, Erik Karlsson, of course, not with the quality players. They had 3, Tomas Hertl, not with the team. Logan Couture, who's still technically with the team, and Alexander Barabanov, not in the NHL anymore. Average NHL players: Nico Sturm, Mark-Edward Vlasic, Mario Ferraro, Matt Benning, and Kevin LeBanc. Vlasic and Ferraro are now not average NHL players anymore. Everybody else not with the franchise. Below average players: Steven Lorentz, Oscar Lindblom, Noah Gregor, Radim Shimmick, James Reimer, Luke Cunnin, Andrew Agazzino, and Derek Pouliot. Noah Gregor, somehow he's back. Just like Palpatine. And then replacement level: Andre Johansson, Jeffrey Vale, Evgeny Svechnikov, Jacob McDonald, Capo Kakinen, Jonah Gadovich, Kyle Crusolo, Aaron Dell. Well, I guess he technically is with the franchise still. Anyway, sorry. And then CJ Seuss. Incomplete grades: Bordeleau, who's still an incomplete grade at this point, but time's running out there. Jacob Peterson, Daniel Gushin, still, again, kind of an incomplete grade. Fabian Zetterlund, William Eklund, who franchise cornerstone. We got that one right. Nick Cicek, Martin Kaut, Nikolai Knizhov, Henry Thrun, and E2 Makanemi. So I think that helps to describe just how much change has happened with this franchise in such a short amount of time. Again, rule number one of a rebuild: never get attached. But I got 4 players you can definitely get attached to right now. So, yeah. Sharks I think this goes to show where Mike Grier needs to get some work done. And I think that's that middle class of players, right? And Eklund and Askarov and Smith and Celebrini, like those are not finished products, right? And Colin Graff is not a finished product. And Shakir Mukhamadoun isn't a finished product. Like, those guys are going to get better. And some of the replacement and incomplete guys are going to be big parts and going to get better. But I think, though, for Mike Grier, it's trying to fill up that middle class. And the good thing is you're kind of in a really nice spot to be able to do that this offseason. I think it's just going to be, how aggressive does Mike Grier want to be this offseason? Because, again, you have your franchise cornerstones who are all on cheap contracts right now. Do you want to really kind of inject some talent into this roster and see if you can maybe start to push things along a little quicker here? So, which will be a fun topic to discuss this offseason. So, we'll be back tomorrow, break down the Sharks game. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.